1 Samuel chapter 23. I want to say it's good to be here, and I'm looking forward to what God's got for us in the meeting, and hope and pray the Lord will do something for us all. And my wife is my most vocal supporter. She'll amen me while I preach. Raise one finger while I'm preaching, she'll say amen. Raise two fingers, she'll start shouting. I raise three, she'll come to the altar and make a profession just to get the service going. And so, tough crowd tonight. I'm telling you. Down south, they'd be laying on the floor laughing on that one. But anyway, good to see you in the house of God tonight. Appreciate you being here this evening. I do want to say thank you to Pastor Allen and also to the church for accommodating us. We had scheduled this meeting for about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we had a death in the church. A lady that had been part of the church for years. She had been in failing health, and she moved away. She moved to Texas, and she passed away about 4 weeks ago, a little bit longer than that. And when she passed away, that was 3 weeks away from the meeting here, and about 2.5, 3 weeks later. And the family wanted to have the funeral at the same time I was supposed to be here. So we had to shift everything, and it was the biggest headache in the world. And I could not believe they did that they wanted to wait that long to bury their mom, but that's how they did it. And so I thank the church. I thank you, preacher, for accommodating us and everything, because it was driving me crazy, because we have other meetings scheduled that we're supposed to be preaching, and I knew I was going to start getting tied up in other meetings as well. And so I thank y'all for accommodating us and making that possible. We could move the dates of the meeting to this particular time. 1 Samuel chapter 23, I'll be in verse number 1, if you would please. Since we've seen you last, we've added our family. We have another grandchild. I think 2 more grandchildren since I've seen you last. I can't remember. Thank God for grandchildren. Pays off not to choke your kids out. If you've got teenage children in your home, and they're getting on your nerves, be patient, hang in there, and one day they'll give you grandchildren, and all the problems your kids cause you be wiped away, and grandkids come along. But anyway, 1 Samuel chapter 23. A little slow on the uptake tonight. 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse number 1, if you would please. Then they told David, saying, Behold, the Philistines fight against Keilah, and they rob the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go and smite these Philistines? And the Lord said unto David, Go and smite the Philistines and save Keilah. And David's men said unto him, Behold, we be afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we come to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? Then David inquired of the Lord yet again. And the Lord answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into thy hand. So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines and brought away their cattle, and smote them with a great slaughter. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. My Jesus, I pray that you'd help us tonight to help your people. We do bless your name and thank you for the privilege it is to be back here in the house of God again. Lord, we thank you that we're able to come and see some of our dearest friends. And God, it has been a couple of years since we've been here, but we thank you, Lord, for their faithfulness. I thank you, Lord, for seeing so many familiar faces. And I pray that you'll bless them. I pray, God, you give them the desires of the heart that would please you. I thank you, Lord, for seeing new faces, new to me. And I pray, God, that you bless them as well. Thank you, God, for the desire of God's people to want to be in the house of God and to be faithful. I pray that you bless them in the days to come. Now, Father, watch after my people back home. Watch after my children back home as well. And we'll thank you for everything you do, for we ask it in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. You be seated. Thank you for standing. I do want to thank you for everything that's been done already to make the meeting possible, and a nice place to stay. And of course, we had good flights coming out here. I consider not crashing to be a good flight, and so we did have good flights coming out here. I appreciate Sister Stephanie helping out, making all that possible, and my wife and I has already had a good time, and I appreciate that already. Looking forward to the days to come and seeing what God's got for us. Now, I haven't gone to language school since I've been out here. I still have the southern drawl, and I apologize if I say something you don't understand. Preacher, just point at me and say stop, and I'll catch it. I think one time I said something. I said toboggan. Everybody busted out laughing, and they laughed at me. I couldn't figure out what was so funny, but sometimes I'll say something, people don't understand what I mean with that, but that's fine. I know what I mean, so that's what's important. But we are now in South Georgia, pastoring a church about 30 minutes from Florida. And the Lord's been good to us there. Been there a little bit over 3 years now, and the Lord's blessed the work there. So I appreciate your prayers for us. In 1 Samuel chapter 23, at the time of the text, David has been anointed to be king prior to this particular point. He has not ascended to the throne of Israel at this particular time. 1 Samuel 16 is where God has anointed him to be king. But he did not assume the throne right after he was anointed to be so. Sometimes when God anoints somebody to do something, He doesn't automatically put them in that position yet. It may take some time for God to develop them and work on them and get them in that place that they need to be in their walk with God. And so you come to 1 Samuel chapter 23. David is going through a battle now. In chapter 23, in verse number 1 and 2, I want you to notice his burden. There's a burden that David is carrying. He said, "Then they told David, saying, Behold, the Philistines fight against Keilah, and they rob the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go and smite these Philistines? And the Lord said to David, Go and smite the Philistines and save Keilah." The burden that David has got is to rescue this small town, that the Philistines have come and they've assaulted this town, and they're trying to abuse this town and conquer this town, a little town called Keilah. When David finds out about it, David goes to God and says, God, what do you want me to do about this? I'm burdened for them. I don't want them to be hurt by the Philistines. I don't want them to be captured and conquered and dominated by them. And so, Lord, what do you want me to do? He goes to God with this burden that he has. He knows that because of what's going on, he knows that Keilah is going to be robbed by the Philistines and dominated by them. And David, just by natural desire, a natural concern for them, he doesn't want to see this happening. I'll say this evening that every person that names the name of Christ, if you claim to be a Christian, there should be some natural desires that you have. When you see somebody else hurting, you should hurt. When you see somebody else going through a valley, you should hurt for them. That shouldn't be taught in a discipleship program before you get it. It should be a natural thing. If you're a child of God, there should be a natural inclination, the feel for others that are going through great trials in their life. And so you see his burden in verse 1 and 2. In verse 3 and verse 4, you see his battle. Again, the Bible said, David's men said unto him, Behold, we be afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we come to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? David inquired of the Lord yet again. The Lord answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines in thy hand. The burden that David carries on again is that he's burdened about the people in Keilah. But then he begins to deal with the reality that he's going through some battles himself. David has a lot of struggles going on in his own life. At this particular time, there are a lot of things going wrong in his life, things he's battling. And so in leading up to the text here in chapter number 22, all these battles have unfolded against him. David's going through some very difficult times in his own life at the time that he's burdened about Keilah. One of the things you have to realize is sometimes you see somebody has a need. If you're not careful, your battles can keep you from seeing somebody else's need. And sometimes somebody else may be going through something, and they may need your attention, and they may need your care. But if you're going through a great battle yourself, sometimes that can blind you from seeing the needs of other people. Oftentimes that cashier at the gas station where you go and pay for your gas, God may be wanting you to give them a tract or invite them to the house of God. But you're going through something yourself that's breaking your heart. And because of that, you neglect to meet their need and invite them to the house of God. So sometimes the battle we have is to care about people when we think we need somebody to care for us. It's a natural instinct that we all have. In verse number 5, you see his bond. Because in verse number 5, he goes in and he delivers the people of Keilah. So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines and brought out their cattle, smote them with a great slaughter. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. David goes in exactly as God has commanded him. He delivers the people of Keilah. He defends the city against the Philistines. And as a result of that, there is a bond that is created between him and the people of Keilah. If you want to have friendships, if you want to have a bond with people, if they see that you care for them and you reach out to them, sincerely reach out to them, oftentimes it creates friendships and relationships that otherwise you wouldn't have. One of the greatest truths that you'll ever learn in your life is that God will use you and you will be the greatest person you need to be only at the time that you become a servant. Right. And you need to understand this in your Christian walk. It applies to every aspect of your life. You will never be happy until you're a servant. You will never be a good husband until you're a servant to your wife. You'll never be a good parent until you realize you need to be a servant to your children. I'm not talking about slavery. I'm talking about servitude. I'm not talking about somebody dominating you and abusing you. I'm talking about you being a servant. Where I pastor at, we are located near the Moody Air Force Base. I have a lot of airmen in my church. I have tried to drive this home in their mind and tell them that you can't be a good airman unless you're a good servant. You can't be a good child to your parents unless you're a servant. I'll explain this. The prodigal son goes to the far country. While he's in the hog pit, he comes to himself. He realizes he's made a horrible mistake in the way that he's treated his dad, his brother, and his family. The Bible said he came to himself, and he said this within himself, I will go home to my father. I will tell my father, I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. Make me as a hired servant. At the moment he said, I want to be a servant, that's when he became a good son. At the moment you become a servant, that's when you become what God wants you to be. You should be a servant to the house of God, a servant to your pastor, a servant to your mate. You children need to be a servant to your parents. You need to be a servant to other people, serve other people, because you will never, ever in your life be truly happy until you reach that place. So, preacher, you don't understand. Everything's about me. Well, the problem you got is everybody else thinks the same thing about themselves. Right. You're going to spend the rest of your life trying to volley for position in your life thinking everything's about you, and it's not. Right. I see little children, 10 years old, got cell phones stuck to the side of their head. And they're walking around. They've been taught all their life that they're awesome, they're great, they're wonderful, they're it. You see it on Facebook. My little kid's 2 years old, and he is so smart. No, he's not. He's only 2 years old. He don't know his head in the hole in the ground. He's not that sharp. You said, preacher, well, you don't understand. My little kid, he's 10 years old. He's brilliant. No, he's not. Most of the knowledge he's got has been given him by somebody else. We've taught our children they're awesome, wonderful, they're great, they're everything but the sun rises and falls on them. I didn't teach my kids that. I did not teach my children that. I said, you're not awesome, and my life don't revolve around you. My life revolves around Mama, my wife. You're Mama. My life revolves around her. Amen. That's kind of tight tonight. I'm not trying to preach me, not preach. I'm just talking about being a servant. Hallelujah. You see us bond. I was running a rabbit trail and that rabbit left me. You also see his betrayal. This is what I'm coming to. We read verse 1 through 5. You come to verse 6. And it came to pass when Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, fled to David to Keilah, that he came down with the ephod in his hand. And it was told Saul that David was come to Keilah. And Saul said, God hath delivered him into my hand, for he is shut in by entering into a town that hath gates and bars. And Saul, which was David's enemy, Saul called all the people together of the war to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. Now I want you to watch what happens. David has delivered the people in Keilah. They are facing certain death. The Philistines are going to wipe them out. The only hope they've got is that David steps in and David delivers them from the Philistines. And David does it. He delivers them. Now word has gotten back to Saul that David is there. Saul's plotting now to go get David in the town of Keilah. You pick up in verse number 9, the Bible said, David knew that Saul secretly practiced mischief against him. And he said to Abiathar the priest, bring hither the ephod. Then said David, O Lord God of Israel, thy servant has certainly heard that Saul seeketh to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me up into his hand? Will Saul come down as thy servant hath heard? O Lord God of Israel, I beseech thee, tell thy servant. And the Lord said, he will come down. Then said David, will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men in the hand of Saul? And the Lord said, they will deliver thee up. In verse number 6 through verse number 12, you see his betrayal. David has delivered Keilah from certain destruction. He has delivered them from certain bondage. And David delivers them by defeating the Philistines for them. Upon doing this, David finds out that Saul, his enemy, has found out he's in Keilah. Saul says, I'm going to go get him. Word gets back to David, Saul is planning to come get him. So David goes and prays to God. So, Lord, will Saul come here? Is Saul going to make it here? And God said, yeah. The problems you've already been dealing with earlier in the chapter, you're still going to deal with. Your problem has not gone away from chapter 22. Your enemy is still seeking after you. Defeating the Philistines at Keilah was not going to stop your battles that you're dealing with already. Then David said, Lord, can I ask you a second question? God said, yes, go ahead. He said, will Keilah, the same people that I just helped, will they turn me over? Are they going to betray me into the hands of my enemy? And God says, son, I hate to tell you this, but yes. The very same people you just helped are going to turn right around and stab you right in the back. I wish I could say tonight, after almost 30 years of preaching, that everybody I've helped has always been very thankful. I wish I could say tonight that every family that I helped try to keep together, I wish I could tell you tonight that every single teenager that I spoke to and counseled with and prayed for has always come back, hugged my neck, said, preacher, thank you. You've saved me from a lot of trouble. I wish I could say tonight that every single married couple that I've helped has come back to me and they have stayed with this thing and going to live for Jesus the rest of their life. I wish I could say that, but if I could say that, my church would be full. Matter of fact, tonight, if you could take every single person that this church has helped, from all the years that Pastor Allen's been here, you can just say it probably just in the last 10 years, that all the people this church has helped, if you could try to get them all back in the building, you'd have to knock out the front walls, you'd have to build all out into the street to get everybody in here. There's been a lot of people that's been helped through this church, yet tonight they're not in the house of God. There's a lot of people that I've helped in my ministry that I would have thought would have stayed with it and walked with God, and they turned their back away from the things of God. So, preacher, what's going on in verse 6 through 12? You see his betrayal. And then you come to the fifth thing. I just wanted you to notice tonight. I want you to notice his bitterness. So, preacher, you think David got bitter? I don't believe so. But I can promise you this, he battled it. I can promise you this, that when you do something for somebody and they turn around and stab you right square in the back, even after you've helped them, been good to them, it can make you bitter. You get upset about it, focus on it, spend your life meditating on it, musing upon it, and cause your heart to grow bitter. Sometimes in the ministry we deal with this. Sometimes you want to throw your hands up, just throw the towel in and say, why am I still helping people? I help people and I help people and I help people. Instead of them being thankful, instead I get criticized. Oftentimes as moms and dads, you do everything you can to take care of your children. My oldest son is 29 years old. My daughter is 27, 28. Our middle son, Aaron, is 25. Our youngest son's 18. We have 3 grandchildren. My children coming up in line, there's been times they've not appreciated the things that mom and dad has done for them. Brother John, I had to come to terms with that as a parent, that my children don't love me the way that I love them. They don't have that capacity to love me the way that I love them. The only time my children would ever love me the way that I love them is when they started having children themselves, and they could understand my love for them. Oftentimes as a parent, you did everything you could for your children. You raised them as best you could, you fed them, you took care of them, and then there come a day and a time they thought they knew more than you know. They turn their back on everything you taught them, and they've gone to the world. If you're not careful, you can get bitter about that. You say, God, this is not right. This is not right what I'm going through. Can I tell you something tonight? Our children, we didn't give them a choice when they was coming up. I didn't give my children a choice what they was going to do. You're just going to go to the house of God. You're just going to live by my rules and regulations. It was not going to be debated. You're going to do what you were taught. We raised them that way. We didn't give them a choice, but I always knew there'd come a day and time they'd have to choose. And sometimes our children don't choose right. Sometimes they make bad decisions. If you're not careful, you can get bitter about it. Sometimes in our married life, you try to be good to your mate. You try to take care of them. There's some here that's gone through this. There's women gone through this, men gone through this, and the love of your life one day turned their back on your affection, and they went a different direction. If you're not careful, you can get bitter about stuff like that. One thing I've learned in life is that life is filled with betrayal. Life's filled with times that people turn their back on you and they wound you deeply. If you're not careful, you can get bitter about it and cause your heart to become cold and indifferent. I wonder, would David have helped Keilah if he knew they were going to betray him? Would David have helped that small town if he knew when he got done they would turn their back on him? Would you have helped them if you knew when you got done they would betray you? Would you do what you do if you know it's not going to pay off? There are times, I have to be honest with you, I help somebody I know is not going to appreciate it. There are times when I know my counsel and my hours and my time that I'm pouring into somebody else's life is not going to pay off. I know they're not going to do what's right. I know that everything I'm telling them is going in one ear and right out the other. It's not going to help them. So, preacher, well, we shouldn't help them then. Yes, you should. Amen. Yes, you should. Amen. The Bible warns us about, he said, the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 6, can you not be defrauded? Can you not take wrong? Paul was talking to the church at Corinth and saying, can you not let somebody do you wrong and it not throw you for a loop? Can you not learn how to let somebody defraud you and hurt you and you not know how to take that kind of abuse and still live for God? I wish that every person I helped was appreciative of it. I wish every person I've helped has always listened to what we told them to try to walk with God and give them instruction. I can't change that. Only they can make the decision with what you tell them, what you help them with. I got to looking at this. I'm looking at three things, three reasons why David, I believe, would have still helped them even though they betrayed him. There's three reasons why you should never close your heart off to coldness. You should never allow your heart to grow bitter. Amen. You should never let yourself get to the place that you're so hard that you don't care. You should never reach that place because it's a dangerous place to be at in your life. So, preacher, well, I'll tell you what, I'm not a bitter person. I'm just bitter at somebody. You can't be. You can't be bitter at somebody. You can only be bitter. To say I'm bitter at somebody means you're right and you're putting that bitterness on somebody else, but that's not scriptural. The Bible talks about bitterness in our own heart. The Bible talks about the root of bitterness and talks about how many others are defiled thereby. The fact is, you're either, I'm trying to put this the right way, you can't focus your bitterness on a person. Bitterness is in your own heart. You have to watch this because it is a root. And buddy, it gets in you. If you're not careful, it can wear you out, rob you of your joy. Say, preacher, well, somebody hurt me, and I'm going to tell you something. I don't appreciate what they did. I don't appreciate getting hurt. I don't go, man, this is wonderful. I appreciate it. Do me wrong. I mean, I want it. I mean, I do not identify with a doormat. I do not identify with a doormat. Why they put the word welcome on a doormat? Somebody walks up to the doormat, stomps it, cleans your feet off, and the mat says, you're welcome. That's not me, friend. I have to fight it when somebody does me wrong. I told somebody the other day that's picking on me, I said, listen, you better quit picking on me because I can say to God what I want to in prayer. I have to be careful what I say to other people, but I can pray bad on you. I was picking on one of the ladies in my church. I said, that's the reason you got a unibrow. I keep praying it on you all the time. I got a little jet lag going here, so that's probably why I preach like this when I get warm. Let me give you three things quickly. There's three reasons why David looked at that crowd probably with his own heart and said, even though you've done me wrong, I would have helped you anyway. Let me give you three reasons. Number one, it made him bigger. If you look in chapter 23, verse number 13, then David and his men, which were about 600, arose and parted out of Keilah and went whithersoever they could go. It was told Saul that David was escaped from Keilah, and he forbore to go forth. The Bible says in verse 13, him and his 600 men But if you look back in chapter 22 where he started off at, verse number 1, only one chapter back, chapter 22, verse 1, David therefore departed thence and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brethren and all his father's house heard it, they went down thither to him. And everyone that was in distress, everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented, that almost like a roll call at my church, gathered themselves unto him, and he became a captain over them, and there were with him about 400 men. You notice the number, 400? Did you catch it in chapter 23, verse 13? Then David and his men, which were about 600. He grew. He had 400 when he went to Keilah. He won the battle. The battle comes to an end. He wins the victory. Keilah turns on him. They betray him. Yet when he leaves and enters into the next battle, he's got 200 more men than what he had before. Amen. So preach, where they come from. They may have come out of Keilah. I don't know. There may have been some people out in the countryside saw what happened and they came to join David. But here's the fact of the matter, that when David got done, even though Keilah betrayed him, he was still bigger for it. His ranks had gotten stronger. He had grown in size and he had grown in his army. As he went to the next battle, he was stronger. He was bigger. And I tell you something tonight, sometimes somebody may do, you may help somebody, they may do you wrong in the end. There is still a benefit, though. You will be stronger. You will be stronger when it's over with. Even if somebody does betray you, you will be stronger if you'll keep your eyes on God. So, preacher, I'm fighting this thing of bitterness. Let me tell you something. Bitterness is about as dumb as burning your house down trying to consume somebody else. Right. That's about as smart as you taking a gun to your head and trying to kill them. Right. That's like jumping out of a boat hoping it drowns the one you're bitter at. You're hurting yourself. You're not hurting the one you're bitter at. Right. You're hurting yourself. You say, preacher, my kids, they wounded me. My ex-wife or ex-husband, preacher, this person, that, but they hurt me, they wounded me. I understand that. I understand the pain of sometimes going through some stuff, but you're only hurting yourself if you focus on that, not on somebody else. Now you say, preacher, well, I've heard preachers say this. I think preachers are a little bit naive on this sometimes. They'll say something like this. They'll preach on bitterness and they'll say, you know, whoever it is you're thinking about the whole time I'm preaching, that's who you're bitter against. That's not so. That's not so. Remembering that you've been hurt is not bitterness. Right. I say this all the time. I tell a bad story from time to time and I say this. I'm not bitter. I just don't forget. Remembering that you've been hurt doesn't mean you're bitter. Right. Bitterness is when you wish harm on somebody else. When you get satisfaction out of somebody else being hurt because they wounded you. Bitterness is when you hope and pray that they come to harm instead of them coming to repentance. When they could come and get help, when you reach the place that you don't even want somebody that's hurt you to get help, then that's bitterness can be setting in. Number two, it will make you bigger. You'll be stronger for it. You'll be strengthened by it. Matter of fact, I'll say tonight that probably, most of any spiritual growth that I have is been because that we have been hurt and wounded from time to time and have gone through adversity. Instead of getting bitterness in our heart, we just turn it over to God. Most people, if you ever watch somebody that testifies about the grace of God, or you get around somebody you know knows the Lord, you get around them long enough, and they've been walking with God for years, there's a trait they're going to have about them, and it's this. They've gone through adversity, they've gone through pain, they've gone through things that's caused them sleepless nights, and yet they've stayed with God. They've loved on Him. They've stayed in their prayer closet. They've stayed in their Bible, and they did not let it consume them what they went through. Amen. People that love God are not people that have a sheltered life. It's people that's learned to look to God in spite of the hardships and the pain that they may have to go through. It made him bigger. Number two, it made him bolder. In chapter 23, verse number 2, therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go and smite these Philistines? And the Lord said to David, go and smite the Philistines and save Keilah. And then in verse number 4, then David inquired of the Lord yet again. And the Lord answered him and said, arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines in thy hand. David was not and it's a play on words. David was not as much delivering Keilah as much as he was obeying God. Yeah. There's a very fine line in that statement you have to grab hold of. He was not so much doing what he was doing to deliver Keilah as much as he was doing what he was doing to obey God. 2 times he said this. He went to God and said, God, what do you want me to do? If God had told him to walk away and not fight for Keilah, he would have walked away. He was not delivering Keilah just because he was burdened about it, and he was. His burden led him to God and asked God what he wanted to do. He was obeying God. What stops you from getting bitter is when you realize you did what you did for God, not for the one you try to help and be a benefit to. Because if you did it for God, no matter what they do, you know you still did it for God to start with. The fact of the matter is, there's times I can sit there and I know somebody's not listening. I'm thinking of a situation right now. My wife and I spent 2 years dealing with the same young lady all the time dealing with her. I'm talking about every week having to have a counsel session with her for 2 or 3 hours on end trying to help this girl. She was always on the verge of just going completely nuts and walking away from the things of God. Eat up with talent, beautiful young lady, could sing. Had a lot of charisma about her. The other young people followed her. Every week we had to have counseling sessions with her. And her mother one night, after we had sat down and talked to her, my wife and I had, her mother asked me, she said, Preacher, how's it going? I looked at her, I said, Sister, I'm not trying to rob you of hope. I said, but I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen. This girl is going to go to the world. I said, I don't think there's anything I can do about it. All I'm doing is buying you time. I said, but you're going to have to hang on to a simple principle that sometimes fruit's got to fall before it ripens. I said, this girl's never going to be what she needs to be until she gets ate up in her sin, embraces it all away, and then turns back to God. I said, this girl's mind is so determined, no matter what I tell her, she's going to do it anyway. And yet we still sit down and counsel her for 2 years, knowing the whole time she's not going to listen. So, Preacher, what happened? She didn't listen. Now she's out in the world. She's already attempted suicide 4 different times. This girl has messed her life up so bad, and yet it's still my hope that somewhere down the way, she's going to open her eyes, have a prodigal son experience. She's going to come to herself and realize what she's done with her life. So, Preacher, what's going to happen if she never does? You're going to get bitter? No. I'm going to say, God, I did everything I did for you. I sit down and talk to her every single time. I did it to glorify you and obey you. If you do what you do to glorify God, listen, I raised my children the way I did, my wife and I did. We didn't do it just to get the applause of our children. We didn't do it just to get the applause of other men. We did it because we tried to honor God. Amen. Now, whether our children turn out right or not, that's between them and God. But we did what we did to honor God. My church, I pastor my church the way I do, to try to honor God. Whether some people get it, whether some people appreciate it, that's between them and the Lord. You do what you do to please God. It made him bigger. Number 2, it made him bolder. When it come to him realizing he did all this for God, he was more showing obedience to God by showing compassion to those in bondage. Now watch this, number 3, and I'm done. It made him bigger. It made him bolder. The number 3, it made him better. In chapter 23 again, look at verse number 6. It come to pass when Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, fled to David to Keilah, that he came down with an ephod in his hand. Listen carefully to this. Now, I know some of you's not looking at your Bible, so listen to what I'm telling you. And I want you to listen carefully who this is that David's talking to. It come to pass when Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, fled to David to Keilah, that he came down with an ephod in his hand. The man's name is Abiathar. He is a priest. He's come with an ephod in his hand. This was an instrument they used to help him pray and get close to God. Now, in the previous chapter, in chapter 22, in verse number 22 of that chapter, the last 2 verses of chapter 22, listen to this. David said unto Abiathar, I knew it that day, when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of thy father's house. Abide thou with me, fear not. For he that seeketh my life seeketh thy life. but with me thou shalt be in safeguard. Now this is the story behind their relationship. The priest's name is Abiathar. What has happened, it had just happened. What I read in verse 22 and 23, it had just happened. Just prior to this, Abiathar's family had been interrogated by Saul. Saul comes to this town, is the city of the priest. Saul gets there, he's angry at the high priest, he's angry at all the other priests, and he looks at one of his men and said, I want you to slay the priest. That man said, I ain't going to do it, king. Saul, I know you're the king, but I am not touching those priests. That's God's men. Doug the Edomite speaks up, and he said, I'll do it. So Doug rises up, kills a priest, then he goes into a bloodletting. He goes into the town and wipes them all out. He kills all of them, every last one of them. And then David says to Abiathar at the close of that awful scene, now David was not there. Abiathar comes to him right after it's happened. He comes to David, I'm going to read it again. And David said unto Abiathar, I knew it that day when Doug the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of thy father's house. You know what he just said? The reason why Saul killed the priest back in that day, Doug the Edomite did as well. The reason he did is because that priest had helped David. And when Saul found out that priest had helped David, Saul had that priest killed, and then the entire city of the priests were killed at the hands of Doug the Edomite. And then David says this to Abiathar, the only survivor. He said, I'm the reason why your father's house, your brothers, your cousins, your mamas, all the parents, I'm the reason they all died. It's my fault. You see the heartbreak of David. He said, I knew it that day. I knew that day. This was all my fault. Because of me and because that priest was good to me, the priest died and all the family died, and you're the only survivor of that battle, Abiathar, and I'm sorry. Can you hear the grief of this man, David, in his own heart, blaming himself for the murder of this man's entire family? So, you come to the very next chapter and you pick up the story where David helps the city of Keilah. Keilah turns their back, betrays him. After they betray him, in verse number 6, and it come to pass when Abiathar, the son of Elimelech, fled to David to Keilah, that he came down with an ephod in his hand. The last time he seen Abiathar when Abiathar stood there weeping in front of David, said, they killed my family. They wiped them all out. And David said, I know, Abiathar, and they did it all because of me. Because your family helped me. Abiathar, I'm sorry. David blamed himself. Now watch this. He delivers Keilah. Keilah turns around, betrays him. You know why David didn't let bitterness set in? Because David knew in his own heart he had caused the death of innocent people himself. Even though it was not his fault, even though he never wanted it to happen, it did happen. And he's looking at a man who has every right to be bitter at him, Abiathar. Abiathar could put his finger in David's face and listen, because you, big boy, my daddy's dead. My brothers are all dead. My whole family's wiped out. All because of you, David. But he didn't. He came to help him. I'm going to tell you what keeps bitterness from getting in your heart. When you look at somebody else that's been through worse than what you've been through, and they still look at you and say, I want to be a help to you. And even when you can look at somebody that you may have done them wrong, and yet they can look at you and smile and say, I'm here to help you. I'm going to tell you something. You say, preacher, you don't know what I've been through. Well, I understand. But there's other people that's been through bad things also. They've gotten through it. They put a smile back on their face, and they went on for God too. What the devil tries to get you to do in your heart and mind is get you to think you're the only one. And nobody knows the pain that you've been through. Can I tell you, there are people that know. And they sit in church and they worship God with a smile on their face. They didn't let bitterness set in their heart because they kept their eyes on God. When I used to work for the state of North Carolina years ago as an inspector, and we did all these different jobs. Whenever you took concrete and you were going to build a bridge. I had to go through engineering school to learn how to build bridges and all kinds of highway construction. You was going to build a bridge. You made this concrete. You had them in these concrete trucks. You see them. They have to turn so many times from the time they leave the concrete plant to the time they get to the job site. They have to turn so many times. There's a counter on the side of it. If it turns too many times, you send it back. If it hadn't turned enough, you make the truck pull off, sit there, and let that drum turn till it gets to that number of times. Before they place the concrete, there's additives they put into it. There's what's called a retardant. That will slow it down. There's something that's called an accelerant. When I say slow it down, I mean it slows it down, the curing process. It takes longer for it to harden. And then they can add an accelerant, and that makes it harden faster. But both of those things are called catalyst. A catalyst is a chemical you can put in something that changes everything it touches but doesn't change itself. It is a catalyst. And that catalyst can make other things harden. It can make other things softer. It can increase the cure time. It can slow it down, whatever it may be. But the catalyst does not change itself. It changes everything around it. We as Christians are supposed to be the same way. We should not be changed by what's around us, but we should change what is around us. We shouldn't be changed by it. We should change it. Amen. In other words, what is around us should not cause us to be affected by it, but we should rise above it as Christians, keep our eyes on God, and we have the impact on what's around us instead of it influencing us to be different than what we should be. Amen. I preach on the subject tonight, the benefits of being stabbed in the back. It'll make you bigger. In the end, it'll make you bolder. And if you keep your eyes on God, it'll make you better. We're going to stand our feet all over the building. Musicians, come and play softly, if you would, please. Over the years in the ministry, we've had things that has caused us hardship and heartache. So, preacher, you want to talk about something? No, you don't want to talk about it. If you do that, it can turn and hurt you and wound you. But I'll never be what God has me to be, what He wants me to be, if I focus on those negative things all the time. If I concentrate on it all the time and think about it all the time, it'll rob me of my joy and my peace that I have in the Savior. Can I tell you, it'll rob you of hope. And that's what the devil's goal is, to take away your hope. He don't want you to have hope that God can work in somebody else's life and help them and strengthen them. He don't want you to have hope. Can I tell you tonight, the Lord wants you to have hope. God can work in other people's lives, use you in other people's lives, and you can have a positive effect on other people. Lord Jesus, we thank you. We ask you, God, tonight, the blessed invitation. We thank you, God, for the good liberty we've had in the house of God tonight. And I pray that you use us to strengthen your people. That's been a heart's desire. Father, the investment the church has had in this meeting, the expense that they put into it, and the sacrifice that it's made, God's not been made that we would be abusive or unkind to God's people, but rather we would come and be a help to your people. And I pray you'd help us to fit that bill. But Father, tonight I pray you to help us, God, to be honest with ourselves. Because, God, I know we'll never be honest with you until we get honest with ourselves. Help us, I pray, God, not to be people given to being abused, but help us, God, to be people that can rise above the hurt sometimes and put our eyes upon you. Father, help us, God, to be what we should be for God. We'll thank you for it in Christ's name.